Hello everyone, good evening. Please put pluses if you can hear me well, or indicate that you are having some sound problems within the comments, so we can check them. We have 30 seconds delay, so if you have any questions about the presentation, webinar, or the covered topics, feel free to leave your comments, so we will check them after the webinar and I will answer them. Let's wait for a couple of minutes while everyone will be ready and everyone will join us, and so then we can start our webinar. I want to remind you that we have a 30-second delay between the picture and what actually happens. So if you have any questions, feel free to add comments and I will answer your questions after the end of the webinar. Well, we are waiting for 1 minute. And so then we will start our webinar. The recording of the webinar will be posted to our YouTube channel, so you can further find it there. All the links to the apps that were used during this webinar will be available within the description of the webinar recording here on our YouTube channel, so you can find them at once. Okay, let's start. Hello everyone, my name is Vadim Rudkevich. And I will introduce myself a little bit later. The topic which I will be talking today is management of documents in Jira and Confluence from scratch. During this webinar, I will show you how you can use the existing Atlassian products to manage documents, how you can improve your processes and workflows, and in general what you can do with documents in Jira and Confluence. Before we start, I would like to present my company that I work at. I work at Stillsoft. Stillsoft is a platinum top vendor on the Atlassian marketplace. Our company is also a silver Atlassian solution partner. We have more than 4,000 customers all over the world. In the Atlassian marketplace, you can find about 20 apps of ours, and we develop different solutions for Jira, Confluence, and Bitbucket. We develop all kinds of solutions that our customers use every day for performing different tasks and activities in Atlassian products. Our most known apps include Smart Attachments for Jira, Awesome Grabs for Bitbucket, Table Filter and Charts for Confluence, Courses and Quizzes for Confluence, Handy Macros also for Confluence, and Talk Inline Comments for Confluence. There is a small delay, so please consider it while you are watching this webinar. So now a quick introduction of myself. My name is Vadim Rudkevich. I'm a product manager of Smart Attachments for Jira and Confluence. I'm a lead of the R&D team, and I help our customers to develop all kinds of document management solutions on the basis of Jira and Confluence. During the webinar, I will outline the case when a company, unfortunately its name I can't tell you, used to implement the document management solution for their compliance documentation on the basis of Jira and Confluence. Let's imagine that our company is called Rocket Cloud. This company develops different cloud solutions for storing data, and it provides additional facilities for storing data. And one time this company decided to reach the enterprise segment, and for doing this they needed to pass different kinds of certifications so that they can prove the security of data, and the enterprise customers can fully trust to their solutions. After some period of time, they decided to create the compliance team, which will be responsible for preparing and managing all the compliance documentation that they need to pass the certification. The compliance team included the following members. So the first one was the Chief Compliance Security Officer. So this is the main person within this team. He's the lead. He governs all the compliance processes within the company and creates tasks for preparing this or that compliance document. The team also included 2 compliance engineers. These 2 people that were responsible for looking up for potential non-conformities and problems that may impact the success of passing the ISO certification. The compliance team also includes a risk manager. This was a person who was responsible for assessing all kinds of risks that may impact the security of data or cause the negative impact on the brand and company operation. And the last member of this compliance team was vendor management. This person was responsible for communication and collaboration with software vendors and hardware vendors. So this person assessed how cooperation with this or that vendor may impact the operation of the company and what risks they may also introduce to the operation of the company as well. Our company has been actively using Atlassian products such as Jira and Confluence for several years, so they decided not to use and not to look up for some other solution and to use these Atlassian applications for implementation of their use case. The main problem which they encountered was that they didn't fully realize how they can implement a straightforward process on the basis of the Jira project, which can easily address all the potential problems, inconsistencies, automatic checkups, and so on for the documents that they will be keeping within Jira, and how they can efficiently handle all the potential problems with this. Implementation of this project imposed several requirements which the compliance team has to meet. The first requirement was the linear workflow. It was necessary for assignees so they can fully understand what's the next step they should do, and they were not ready to have multiple actions, so this can puzzle and confuse the end user and cause additional questions to the lead of the project. They also wanted to include some additional checks of documents within a particular category or absence of a file in a category so that they can automate these manual validations that they have at the beginning and just get rid of them. The next requirement was the automation of routine operations. This was needed just to remove the unnecessary documents, some draft documents that appeared while the team was working on a specific compliance document. The next requirement was a restriction of access to specific documents while they have been approved or while they are being reviewed, so that no one can introduce or add some changes within documents, make some updates within them, and these updated documents without the approval are sent to the auditor, and this can finally lead to additional problems with the ISO certification and can lead to additional questions to the Chief Compliance Security Officer regarding the changes within the document. The access restrictions were designed to limit access to documents so that only the Chief Security Compliance Officer has full access to these documents and can manage them the way he really needed. And the last requirement was a capability to edit documents from Jira. These requirements were the key requirements for this project, and they also needed Confluence for further distribution of the produced compliance documents, so everyone from the company can go through this or that document and understand what information is outlined within it. Well, that's all what's about the project scope, and now I will show you how it was implemented within Jira and Confluence, so you can better understand what capabilities for document management you can use. First of all, I will show you how the process actually works in Jira, and then I will show you how you can implement it yourself and what you need to configure, and how you can adjust it to your actual needs. I cannot fully guarantee that the current implementation of the process will fully fit your needs, but you can use it as an example to implement your own use cases within Jira and Confluence for document management, and find some additional mechanics and frameworks of what you can do to better manage documents in Jira and Confluence. Well, the process starts when the Chief Compliance Security Officer creates a new request. Here in the top right corner, you will see icons that will indicate the current user who is working on the task. Our Chief Compliance Security Officer creates a new request for some document. For example, let's say it's the login and monitoring standard. While creating a new request, our Chief Compliance Security Officer prefers to attach several variants of the compliance document which the assignee needs to prepare, so that the assignee can use these documents for reference and can better understand what kind of the documents need to be prepared, and so that he can adjust it to the actual needs of the company. This simplifies the overall process and allows compliance engineers to quickly reuse parts of this or that document to prepare the final draft version of the document, and much more effectively create documents. Our officer attaches several examples of files into the dedicated category and creates a new request. Tasks can be also created by the vendor or risk manager when they find some gaps within the processes. But anyway, by default, all tasks are assigned to our Chief Compliance Security Officer, which will further distribute the load among his colleagues, his teammates. This is needed to verify that a particular document is really needed for passing a specific certification, or whether this or the document can be merged with some existing document, or some additional updates can be added within the already existing document. Once the task has been created, the Chief Compliance Security Officer can assign this task to one of compliance engineers, or to vendor manager, or to the risk manager, depending who is responsible for this or that document. For example, in our case, the login and monitoring standard relates to the compliance engineer, and our Chief Compliance Security Officer assigns this task to the compliance engineer who will be working on this document. Our compliance engineer receives a notification about this task. He opens the Jira and locates this task among other tasks. So he proceeds to collection of requirements for this document. In addition, the compliance engineer looks through the examples of documents which were attached, just to better understand what information should be covered by this document, what structure it should have, and some additional details that should be included within the document. Once the compliance engineer has reviewed all the document examples and has identified the probable structure of the document, he proceeds to the elicitation of requirements from the team which is responsible for this process within the company. At this point of time, our compliance engineer transitions the issue to the next stage, where he will be collecting requirements. During the stage, our compliance engineer communicates with operations teams. He identifies how the process is organized at the moment, what requirements are imposed, how they are met, and additional details which should be mentioned for passing the specific certification. Once all the requirements were collected, all the details were clarified, our compliance engineer transitions the issue to the next stage. During the stage, the compliance engineer will be working on preparation of the document. Within the Jira project, there is a project storage which contains all the document templates which compliance engineer should use for creating a new document. So, for example, in our case, this is a standard. So our compliance engineer opens the dedicated folder and downloads the template of a standard, which he will be working further. The compliance engineer downloads this template to his local computer and starts working on the document. He updates title of the document, adds the necessary sections, and outlines all the information which he has collected from the team which is responsible for this or that process. Please ignore that we are using a document with some sample text snippets. This is done intentionally just for you to focus more on the process, how it was built, rather than on the document structure and its content. Our compliance engineer is working on the document, adds some parts, removes the necessary paragraphs, adds requirements that were mentioned. So he is just working on the document which will reflect the actual processes within his company. Once everything is done, our compliance engineer saves the document and returns back to Jira and uploads to the issue where he is the assignee, so that the compliance security officer can proceed to its review. The compliance engineer attaches this document draft into the corresponding category, which is called draft, so everyone can see that the document is not yet ready and work on it is still in progress. Sometimes compliance engineers forget to give a proper name, and so that they upload files with document template name, which is not really correct, but they have a capability to rename the attachment right in Jira and give a proper name according to the task. The compliance engineer continues work on this document until he understands that it's ready. This may take several revisions, several versions of the document. Of course, he can download the document to his local computer, edit it, and re-upload back, but the compliance engineer can initiate the document editing right from Jira itself. So here the compliance engineer is actively editing the document, adds some additional paragraphs, removes the out-of-date information, and saves the document once all the modifications are performed. The saved document is automatically saved to Jira, where a key will be added as a revision. In some situations, a revision may not be created, but the compliance engineer can manually select the revision from the list and add it as a document revision to the initial document which was uploaded at first time. This way, all the document revisions are stored in one place and everyone can quickly trace the modifications that were made in this or that document. And if needed, the compliance engineer can initiate another round of edits within the document. After several stages of edits, the compliance engineer understands that the document is ready and he can pass it to review to the Chief Compliance Security Officer, who will check it for different inconsistencies, missing information, so on and so forth. Once the document is ready, our compliance engineer transitions the task to the next stage. Just to decrease the number of potential errors, the compliance engineer has only one action, pass to review. So he clicks this action and passes the document to review. During this transition, the compliance engineer may encounter an error that the necessary document is not present in the dedicated category. This is required by the process because the Chief Compliance Security Officer is a very busy person, so he will not go through the issue looking for a specific document. So in this case, the compliance engineer must attach the file into the correct category. So the name of this category is Document for Review. Our compliance engineer acknowledges this problem and he quickly moves the document pending review to the correct category. So then he can transition the issue to the review phase. At this stage, our compliance engineer has limited access to this document, so he cannot upload a new version or just make some additional edits within this document while the document is passed to review. This was done intentionally to ensure that the Chief Compliance Security Officer is reviewing the latest document revision with all the latest updates and corrections. So it excludes the situations when the compliance engineer decides to change anything in the document while the Chief Compliance Security Officer is reviewing it. The task is reassigned to the Chief Compliance Security Officer, who proceeds to the review of this document. The Chief Compliance Security Officer opens the document for review. He can make some edits himself, or he can comment on specific points for correction. This mainly depends on how well the document was prepared and how critical modifications and updates are needed within this document. Our Chief Compliance Security Officer can correct and update some paragraphs himself, or he can comment on them so that the compliance engineer will go through the comments and update the document accordingly. Once the compliance security officer has reviewed the document, he saves it with all his comments and corrections, and the document is automatically uploaded to the Jira issue, where it will be saved as a separate document revision. The Chief Compliance Security Officer has reactions which he can initiate at this stage. The first action, he can reject the document if it's not ready yet and some updates are needed, or he can archive the document if he sees that the document can be merged with some other document, or he can approve the document if it's accurate and there are no other inconsistencies within it. In our case, the compliance security officer decides that the document is not ready yet and some updates are still needed, so he rejects the document. While rejecting the document, the compliance security officer selects the initial assignee, the person who was working on this document, and adds information about what updates are required in this document, so that he initiates the transition. At this point, our document is automatically moved from the document pending review to the draft category. When we open this task on the behalf of the compliance engineer who will be adjusting the documents and making corrections within it, we can see that now he has the full access to the document and can edit it and perform some additional operations on it. The compliance engineer opens the latest document revision and proceeds to its review and editing according to the comments of the Chief Compliance Security Officer. He goes through the document and adds the missing information or corrects it according to the command from the Chief Compliance Security Officer. Once all the updates and corrections within the document are done, our compliance engineer saves this document to the Jira issue as a new document revision. Here you can see that this is the latest revision. The compliance engineer initiates another round of document review and triggers the corresponding action in Jira. Here, he may encounter the similar problems that the document is not in the proper category. The compliance engineer moves the document to the appropriate category and initiates the transition to the next stage of the workflow. At this point, the compliance engineer is no longer able to edit this document while it is being reviewed by the Chief Compliance Security Officer, as I stated a little bit earlier. The Chief Compliance Security Officer opens the document, reviews it, and understands that it fully addresses all the necessary requirements for this document, and he can proceed to its approval. The Chief Compliance Security Officer approves the document and transitions the issue to the next stage. Here you can see that the latest document revision was placed into the approved category, and all the other document revisions were moved to the document change log category, where they will reside just for further traceability and for history purposes. At the last stage of the workflow, the Chief Compliance Security Officer needs to publish this document. He just opens this document and saves it as a PDF file, which he will further upload into the Jira issue. The Chief Compliance Security Officer opens this task and clicks Publish Document. If he just clicks the Publish Document button, he will see another error that the PDF file is not present in the necessary category. He will see that the published category should contain the PDF file, while at the moment there is no file within it. The Compliance Security Officer may try to upload the file into some other category which is not the correct one, and in this case he will still receive the same error until he moves the PDF file to the correct category which is published. Once the document has been added into the correct category, the Chief Compliance Security Officer clicks Publish, and the document is added into the published category. During this transition, all the document examples from the related category are automatically removed from the issue, so they will no longer be stored within your Jira issue, so that the process remains clean and no additional junk files are collected within Jira issues. Well, now let's try to understand how this process was implemented in Jira and how we can build it from scratch. First of all, you need to install the Smart Attachments app, which will be used as a basis for implementation of this use case. Now I'm logging as the Jira administrator, so I can configure the Smart Attachments app. You need to open the project settings. Here you need to open the Smart Attachment section, and here you will see the category scheme which is used. It's very simple. The category scheme is pretty simple. It just contains the list of categories. Each category represents the status which the document goes throughout the workflow, and in general that's all. When you are editing the category scheme, here you can see that you can define the category names. Additionally, you can also set the issue types which will be used for showing this or that category. So in some issue types, some category can be hidden. And there are also access restrictions, so you can set up the global access restrictions for categories, and users that are not mentioned within these access restrictions, they will not see the corresponding categories in the issue view. For this use case, the access restrictions are not needed because we will be using the status-specific restrictions, which provide more flexibility in configuration. The status-specific restrictions allow you to set up the read or read and write access to categories when the issue is within a specific status. So this way you can get more flexibility in configuration and regulate the read or read-write access to categories depending on the current stage of the issue. For example, when our issue is in the approved, publish, or document review stage, we set read restrictions for the document for review, approved, and published categories, and so that only the Chief Compliance Security Officer has the full access to all these categories when the issue is in the specific status. This way, the compliance team will not be able to add some changes while the Chief Compliance Security Officer is reviewing the document or has approved or published it. This was done intentionally to exclude the situation when someone makes some unexpected changes and the whole workflow should be restarted from the very beginning. The status-specific restrictions allow you to hide categories from the issue view in specific statuses too. So, for example, in this case, we hide the document changelog category when the work on the issue is in progress. For editing documents, we have used the Go Edit app from Context Work team. Let's get back to the issue. And here, when you hover over the document, you can see that there is the Edit Attachments Directly link. And when you click it, you will proceed to the editing of the document on your local computer. The Go Edit app opens the application for editing this file format on your local computer, so you can seamlessly edit this or that file without just downloading it to your local computer. The Go Edit app supports different applications such as Microsoft Office, Photoshop, Illustrator, and any other applications that you can use for editing this or that file format. Additionally, there were a series of improvements in the workflow itself, so let's review them in details. Well, let's go to the Jira settings and let's find our workflow so I can show you what was done in it. I tried to use the capabilities of Jira itself and the capabilities of smart attachments just to decrease the number of apps you need to install. Okay, what was done? If we're talking about the collecting requirements to drafting document transition, nothing was done here because here we gave enough freedom to the user to do whatever he or she needs. On the transition, the drafting document to document review, what was done? At the drafting document to document review transition, we have added the validator, which was checking the document for review category for presence of the Office Word files, so that the transition will not be executed if this category is empty or there are no files of the specific pattern. Besides the name pattern, you can also change it for the regular expression for more complex use cases of yours. Additionally, we have configured the post function, which assigns the issue to the lead developer. In our case, it's the project lead, and the task is automatically assigned to the Chief Compliance Security Officer, who proceeds to the review of the document after execution of this transition. This way, nobody needs to remember that you need to assign the issue to the Chief Compliance Security Officer as it is performed automatically. When our document is in the document review stage, as you remember, the Chief Compliance Security Officer can approve it, reject, or archive. For the situations when the Chief Compliance Security Officer needs to reject the document, we have a post function which moves attachments from the document for review category to the category draft when the Chief Compliance Security Officer rejects the documents. So the compliance engineer or, for example, risk or vendor manager can view the document in the draft category and can continue with its editing. In our case, the post function moves any document as we know that in the document for review there will be only the Word document, so there will be no other file formats within this category. Once the Chief Compliance Security Officer has reviewed the document, he proceeds to its approval. And from the document in review to the approved transition, we also have two post functions. The first post function moves attachments from the document for review category to the approved category. What is special about this post function is that it moves not the whole document, but only the latest revision of this document. This was done intentionally just to exclude the situation when someone confuses or messes up with the latest document revision and saves not the correct version. So by default, only the latest document revision is moved to the approved category. And the second post function moves attachments from the document for review, so document revisions that were remained, to the document change log, so everyone can further look through these revisions if needed, or so they can maintain the traceability of changes that were made in the particular document. And these document revisions, they can be kept for history for a specific period of time. And at the last stage, when our issue is transitioned from approved to the published stage, we have a post function which checks that there is a PDF file in the published category. Otherwise, it will not allow the transition and the closing of the issue. And at this transition, we have also two post functions. And the first post function, it moves attachments from the category approved to published, so that everyone can see that the document was finally approved and is already published, and everyone in the company can use this document as a reference for specific compliance procedures. And here we also have the second post function, which deletes all attachments from the document examples category, so that it clears all the unnecessary and junk files that were used for reference for document creation. With these post functions and with these automations, we have addressed the issues with the human errors when someone makes some incorrect actions or uploads files in the improper category, or just deletes a file or keeps them when not needed. So this is how the process was organized in Jira itself. And now let's review what was additionally performed in Confluence. To make documents public to everyone in the company, there were some also adjustments on the Confluence side, and I will give you more details on them. Okay, let's open our Confluence, and here it is. I'm logging here as the Confluence administrator. Once the Chief Compliance Security Officer has published the document, he needs to upload it to Confluence to the document storage, where it will be kept until the next compliance period. The Chief Compliance Security Officer opens the space which is used for keeping the compliance documentation and accesses the file storage within it. The file storage is accessible on the sidebar. It's called Files and Documents. When clicking it, when the Compliance Security Officer clicks this link, he will open the file storage with the folders within it. In our case, the Chief Compliance Security Officer uploads a document which relates to login and monitoring, so he just drops it into the related folder. He can also navigate through folders and view what files are stored within each folder. I have relogged as the Chief Compliance Security Officer so that I can upload a file into the necessary folder. The Compliance Officer clicks a document, selects the file on his local computer, and uploads this document, its PDF version, into the folder. The structure of folders was created specifically just to simplify the process of passing the compliance documentation to the auditor, so he can quickly identify all the necessary document in the particular folder. Well, once the document has been uploaded to the file storage, the Chief Compliance Security Officer needs to publish it to the Confluence page, where everyone from the team and from the company can look through it and find out the information which may relate to his or her processes which he or she is involved. Our compliance officer can quickly copy the document, the embed link to this document, and paste it on a Confluence page where this document will be previewed. The Chief Compliance Security Officer opens the section with standards. As this document is a standard, he clicks the Publish Standard button, and our Confluence loads the page template. The Compliance Officer inserts the link from the clipboard and fills out details for the document in the Page Properties macro. Additionally, the Compliance Officer enters the page name on the basis of the document name. With the help of the Page Properties macro, our Compliance Officer uses it for management of metadata about the document. So the metadata includes the publication date, the last review date, next review date. Also, it contains the Jira issue task with the initial document, and also information about the certification which this document addresses, and some information for the RACI metrics about the person who is responsible, who is accountable, who is consulted, and who is informed. This document metadata will be used to generate several reports on the documents stored in Confluence, so everyone can quickly access them and view which document and when was published and when its next review date. The Compliance Officer selects the publication date, last review date, and the next review date at once. Additionally, the Compliance Officer copies the link to the Jira issue. This is needed just for task traceability to ensure that a task was created for development of this or that document. This is needed just to see who initiated the development of this document and what was the progress on it. For the certification field, the Compliance Officer provides information about the ISO standard which this document covers. The responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed fields are used to generate the RACI metrics in Confluence on the basis of values within these fields. And information in these fields will also give the document editors hints on who can assist with development of this document in future. The Compliance Officer fills out this information, for example, as responsible. In our case, this is a monitoring team lead. Accountable is our Compliance Officer. Consulted, the document editor worked with the operations team and with the monitoring team, and who is informed, it's all the staff in the company. Once the page is saved, the Compliance Officer adds several labels that will be used for generation of the reports on the basis of these pages. So here the Compliance Officer adds the label standard, which indicates the type of the document, and he also adds the information about the certification, about the ISO standard, which this document covers. When the document was published on a Confluence page and all the necessary labels was added, our Compliance Officer can open the list with all standards and find the newly published document right there on the list. Here is how it looks. Here in the report, everyone can see the published document. Here it is, the login monitoring standard, and all the metadata about it. To pass a specific ISO certification, you need to have also the document calendar with the list of documents and the dates when the document was published and when it should be reviewed. To automatically generate this calendar, we will use the Page Properties report macro with the metadata of the documents that we have already published. What I'm doing, I'm creating a new blank page, and here I will add the Page Properties report macro and will further configure it. Let's name this page as the document review calendar, and let's add the Page Properties report macro on this page. This macro will go through our Confluence pages and will collect all the documents in the single report with all the necessary metadata that we want to show in it. The main label which we will use for generation of the report will be compliance. If needed, you can also add additional filters just to restrict the sampling to the standard documents, to the policies, or anything else. And the last thing which the compliance officer needs to consider is a set of columns for showing. So here I just list the columns with the dates that should be visible in the document review calendar. Once you have configured the page properties report macro, you can save it on the page, and the macro will go through Confluence pages and will collect all your compliance documents within the single report. With the page properties report macro, you can also create the RACI matrix. Of course, it will not look like a standard RACI matrix, but it will contain all the necessary information about user roles that are involved into the development and approval of this or that document. So here is how it looks. I just copy the page with the document review calendar, and I will change several columns that will be shown in our RACI matrix. I just give it a name, the document control RACI matrix, and I need to edit the settings of the page properties report macro. So here I'm just defining a new set of columns that will be shown in this RACI matrix. So here in the page properties report macro, you need to enumerate the responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed columns. And that's all. After the page saving, you can see that we have some kind of a RACI matrix with information about who is responsible for this or that document, who is accountable, and so on and so forth. So if you will change these values on a dedicated Confluence page, your RACI matrix will be updated accordingly. It's very convenient to you, and you need it all the time change the same information in the report and on the Confluence page where this is a document is stored. This way you can reuse metadata for building different sorts of reports that you need and show information that you really need in this or that situation. And as you remember, our documents are stored in the file storage, but this file storage has some access restrictions, so only the compliance team has full access to all the files stored within it, while the rest of the company employees has only the read access to documents that are stored within this file storage. The compliance team has full access to all the folders and documents stored within this file storage. They can add new files, rename them, change, update, and so on and so forth. All the other employees, they will have only the read access to these files, and they will not be able to corrupt anything with the compliance documentation. When I log in as a Confluence administrator, I can restrict access for a specific folder, like you are doing this for a regular Confluence page. In the access restrictions, you can see that the folder is restricted to administrators and compliance team who can edit all the documents and files within it, and all the other people, they can only view files and browse through folders. In the file storage, you can open a specific file for preview, or you can work with it. For example, you can initiate its editing through the Atlassian companion and add additional changes into this document if needed. The editing of documents is performed with Atlassian companion, so it's a native application from Atlassian, so you needn't think over some additional solutions for on-the-fly document editing in Confluence. Here I'm adding some minor changes in the statement of applicability and save it directly to Confluence as a new document revision. So after the reload, you can see that there are several revisions of this document. If you want to share the link to a specific folder with some external person, for example, in our case, this is a compliance auditor, you can do it. All you need is just to generate a share link file and enable the access to the folder for non-Confluence users, and that's all. When I copy this link and open it in an incognito tab, The compliance auditor has a full structure of folders with documents within them, and so that he needn't just go through an archive with all the documents at once. For situations when your Confluence is behind firewall and there is no external access to it from the internet, you can just download the whole folder structure to your local computer, and you can further share this archive with folders and subfolders with the compliance auditor if needed to. This operation can take some time and greatly depends on the size of documents within the folder you are attempting to download. Once a file has been downloaded, you can open it for preview and find that there are all the folders with documents within it. For cases when you do not want to go to the file storage all the time, you can embed the folder structure from the file storage into your Confluence page and navigate through it while browsing the Confluence page itself, so that it's much more convenient to you and you needn't all the time switch between different sections of Confluence, as you can do everything in line on a Confluence page. You just need to embed the folder and paste the embed link on a Confluence page, and that's all. Once a macro has been inserted on a Confluence page, you can navigate through your file storage on a Confluence page without leaving it. You can also upload new files into the file storage directly into the necessary folder in your file storage. And the file uploaded through the macro, it will appear in the file storage itself and where it will reside. You can also open files through the folder macro and preview them, view their content, and also add inline comments like you get used in Confluence itself. So here is how it works in Confluence and Jira. All the basic operations on documents you can perform through the macro, something like renaming of the document or removal of it from the file storage. If you remove a specific document, you can undo operation. You have about 5 seconds for doing this if you have accidentally initiated the removal of the file. Well, I'm afraid that that's all. Many thanks for your attention, and now we will have the Q&A section. I will go through your questions that you asked and I will try to answer them. Okay, the first question: how to create categories that will indicate the current status of the document. For doing this, we have used our app, which is called Smart Attachments for Jira. With the help of this app, we have created a category scheme, which contained a set of categories with the names according to the current status of the document. The app allows you to create different categories, which you can use for different situations. The most common use case is implementation of the document review process, but it can also be used for categorization of file formats or for other cases when you need to differentiate between different files. The app also supports document revisions and different kinds of workflow automations like post functions and validators, which can simplify the end user experience with attachments and decrease the number of human errors while going through the project workflow. What about the RACI metrics? This is not a very beautiful approach to generate the final RACI metrics, but it allows you to automate this process and to keep the RACI metrics always up to date, and you needn't do the same work twice. So you can consider it as a workaround. This is very convenient when you need to introduce some small changes in to your RACI metrics, and sometimes you will have just to open the necessary page, add these corrections, and they will be automatically reflected in the generated report without any input from you. Do you have any other questions? Feel free to ask them.